The wind howled across the empty desert as Caleb Mercer tightened his grip on the rusted gate. The sign hanging crooked above it creaked with every gust, barely holding together after decades of neglect. Black Hollow population 312, the faded letters read. But Caleb already knew the truth. Population 0. At least, that's what everyone had told him before he spent his very last $100 buying the abandoned ghost town nobody else wanted. What he didn't know was that someone inside Black Hollow had been waiting for him. Before we begin, take 1 second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this take heart, time, and passion to create, and your support helps keep these emotional journeys alive. Now settle in, because this story will stay with you long after it ends. Caleb Mercer had spent most of his 36 years losing things. First it was his father, crushed beneath a tractor wheel during a drought season so brutal it turned the family ranch into cracked dirt and dust storms. Then came the bank that swallowed the ranch whole before Caleb was even old enough to understand debt. His mother passed quietly 3 winters later, leaving him with nothing but unpaid bills, an old pickup truck, and a stubborn refusal to quit breathing. For years, Caleb drifted from town to town across the western states, taking ranch jobs nobody else wanted. He fixed fences, broke horses, slept in barns, ate canned beans beside campfires. Every dollar he earned disappeared into survival. By the time he reached the tiny county auction outside New Mexico, he was exhausted in a way sleep could never fix. The auction itself looked pathetic. A few folding chairs, dusty paperwork, tired men in old hats hoping for miracles. Most of the properties were worthless scraps of land or buildings ready to collapse. Then the auctioneer laughed and held up a yellow file. Next item, he announced. Black Hollow Ghost Town. Includes 12 structures, abandoned church, general store, water tower, and surrounding acreage. Starting bid, $100. The crowd burst into laughter. Haunted place, someone muttered. Place should have burned down years ago. Waste of money. Caleb almost ignored it too. But something about the photograph attached to the file caught his eye. The town looked lonely, forgotten, like it understood him. $100, the auctioneer repeated. Any takers? Silence. Caleb looked down at the worn envelope in his jacket pocket. $106. Everything he had left in the world. His brain screamed not to do it. But his heart whispered something else. Sold, Caleb said quietly. The room erupted with chuckles. One old rancher leaned toward him. You just bought yourself a graveyard, son. Maybe he had. 3 days later, Caleb arrived at Black Hollow just before sunset. The place looked worse in person. Buildings leaned sideways like tired old men. Windows were shattered. Sand drifted through the streets. The church bell hung twisted. Half the town looked ready to collapse if the wind blew too hard. His truck engine died with a cough. Perfect. Caleb climbed out and stared into the silence. No birds. No voices. Nothing. For the first time in years, he felt completely alone. Then he saw smoke rising from the chimney of a house at the far end of town. Caleb froze. Slowly, he walked toward it. The wooden porch groaned beneath his boots. Light flickered behind torn curtains. He knocked once. No answer. He knocked again. Then the door opened halfway, and the barrel of a shotgun appeared inches from his chest. An elderly woman stood behind it with silver hair tied tightly behind her head. Her eyes were sharp as broken glass. You ain't welcome here, she said. Caleb raised both hands carefully. Easy, ma'am. I own this town. The woman stared at him for several seconds. Then, from somewhere deeper inside the house, a little girl's voice spoke. Grandma. Who is it? Caleb's eyes widened. The woman hesitated, and that was the moment everything changed. Her name was Eleanor Whitaker. She was 72 years old and carried grief in every wrinkle on her face. The little girl behind her was Rosie, her 9-year-old granddaughter with tangled brown curls and enormous frightened eyes. Inside the house were 3 more people. A middle-aged man named Walter, whose injured leg forced him to walk with a cane. His wife June, and a teenage boy named Eli who barely spoke at all. 5 people, living secretly inside an abandoned ghost town for nearly 7 years. Caleb couldn't believe it. You've been here this whole time? He asked. Eleanor lowered the shotgun slightly. Where else were we supposed to go? The story came out slowly over coffee and suspicion. Years earlier, Black Hollow had nearly died after the railroad shut down. Families left one by one until only a handful remained. Then a mining company bought the surrounding land, promising jobs that never came. Eventually taxes buried everyone, but Eleanor's family had nowhere left to go. Walter's injury made work impossible. June battled illness. Eli's father disappeared after a gambling debt turned dangerous. Rosie's parents died in a highway accident. So they stayed, hidden, forgotten, surviving on canned food, trapped rainwater, and whatever they could grow behind the old church. "Why didn't you ask for help?" Caleb asked quietly. Walter laughed bitterly. From who? That night Caleb slept inside the abandoned sheriff's office using his coat as a blanket. The wind rattled broken windows while his thoughts spun endlessly. He had bought the town hoping maybe he could fix one broken thing in his life. Instead, he found broken people. The next morning, Caleb made a decision that scared him more than poverty ever had. He stayed. At first, Eleanor hated the idea. "You'll leave eventually," she told him flatly. "Everybody leaves." But Caleb surprised her. He repaired the water pump using salvaged parts from the old gas station. He cleared debris from the streets. He fixed roofs before the coming winter. Every sunrise brought more work. And slowly, something strange happened. Black Hollow started breathing again. Rosie followed Caleb everywhere. She watched him repair fences and asked endless questions. "You think ghosts are real?" she asked one evening. Caleb smiled faintly. "Maybe. You scared of them?" "No," he said. "I think lonely things are sadder than scary." The little girl thought about that for a long moment. Then she slipped her tiny hand into his. Nobody had held Caleb's hand since he was a child. Weeks passed. Then months. For the first time in decades, Caleb began feeling something dangerous. Hope. But hope has a way of attracting trouble. One afternoon, 3 black SUVs rolled into town throwing dust across the streets. Men in expensive boots stepped out. Their leader introduced himself as Martin Granger, representative of Red Mesa Development. "We own the surrounding land," he explained smoothly. "And now that someone legally purchased Black Hollow, we'd like to buy it from you." "How much?" $10,000. To Caleb, it sounded like fortune itself. $10,000 could change everything. But something about Granger's smile felt rotten. "What do you want with the town?" Caleb asked. Granger glanced around. "There's lithium under these hills. A lot of it." Caleb's stomach tightened. "Mining. Bulldozers. Demolition. Black Hollow wouldn't survive, neither would the family living inside it." "I'm not selling," Caleb said. Granger's smile vanished. Instantly. "You should think carefully," he replied. "Places like this tend to have accidents." The SUVs disappeared into the desert. That night Eleanor sat quietly beside Caleb outside the church. "You should take the money," she said softly. Caleb shook his head. "You need it. So do you." Eleanor stared into the darkness for a long time. Then tears filled her eyes. "We stopped believing anyone would ever choose us." Caleb didn't know what to say to that. Winter arrived brutally. Snow buried the roads. Supplies ran dangerously low. Pipes froze. Walter's condition worsened after a fever nearly killed him. Still Caleb refused to leave. He hunted rabbits, chopped firewood until his hands bled, fixed generators in freezing temperatures. One stormy night, Rosie developed pneumonia. Her breathing turned shallow and terrifying. "We need a hospital," June cried. But the roads were buried beneath snowdrifts. Caleb wrapped the little girl in blankets and carried her through the blizzard himself. 8 miles. Through freezing wind. Step after step after step. At one point he collapsed to his knees from exhaustion. Rosie's tiny hand touched his face weakly. "Don't leave me," she whispered. Those words hit Caleb harder than the storm ever could. Because his whole life, everyone had left. His father, his mother, friends, home, dreams. Everything disappeared eventually. But not this time. He forced himself back up. And somehow, just before dawn, he reached the highway where a passing truck spotted them. Rosie survived, but Caleb nearly didn't. When he finally woke in the hospital days later, he found Eleanor sitting beside his bed. She looked older somehow, softer too. "You stubborn fool," she whispered. Caleb managed a weak smile. Eleanor took his hand carefully. "Your family now," No one had ever said those words to him before. Spring returned to Black Hollow with warm winds and wildflowers pushing through cracked streets. Then something incredible happened. People started coming back. An old mechanic who once grew up there returned after hearing rumors someone was rebuilding the town. Then came a widow looking for peace. A veteran searching for purpose. A young couple trying to escape city debt. Caleb welcomed them all. Together they repaired buildings, reopened the general store, restored the church bell, and planted gardens. Black Hollow stopped being a ghost town. It became a refuge, a place for forgotten people to start over. But Martin Granger wasn't finished. One evening Caleb found the church spray painted with threats. Leave now. 2 nights later, the water tower exploded in flames. The town panicked. We can't fight men like that, Walter warned. Maybe he was right. Red Mesa had lawyers, money, influence. Caleb had stubbornness and a town full of wounded souls. Still, he refused to surrender. Then Rosie gave him an idea. The little girl stood beside him watching the sunset one evening. Why don't you tell people the truth? She asked. Caleb frowned. What truth? That this place saved us. So Caleb did. A traveling reporter heard about Black Hollow and came to investigate. She expected another failed desert story. Instead, she found families rebuilding lives together. Her article spread everywhere. Ghost Town gives forgotten families a second chance. Donations poured in. Volunteers arrived. Even veterans organizations offered support restoring homes. Suddenly Red Mesa faced public backlash. The company quietly withdrew their plans months later. Black Hollow was safe. The night the town celebrated, lanterns glowed across every street. Music echoed from the rebuilt saloon. Children laughed beneath the stars. Caleb stood alone near the edge of town staring into the desert. Rosie ran over and tugged his sleeve. You coming? He looked toward the lights, toward the people waiting for him. Family. For most of his life, Caleb thought home was a place you were born. He was wrong. Home was where someone waited for you to return. Years later, travelers passing through Black Hollow often stopped to admire the strange little town that refused to die. Some called it a miracle. Others called it luck. But the people who lived there knew the truth. Black Hollow survived because one broken rancher spent his last $100 on something everyone else had given up on. And in saving that town, he finally saved himself. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that even the most forgotten places, and the most forgotten people, can still find hope again.